So I've been doing business strategy both at large corporations like Nokia, but also working for small startups, especially over the last 7 years. I'm one of the advisors and mentors at the Innovation Warehouse. I run my own boutique and a strategy consultancy for startups, also for small and medium-sized enterprises. I'm helping them develop business propositions, value propositions, and go-to-market strategies. And with those things, I help them grow their businesses, increase their sales, and oftentimes to secure additional funding. So we're going to talk a little bit about the why and the what of value. How are we then going to figure out where is the value that you want to communicate? Then how do you go about expressing that kind of value? And then I'm going to take you through a really quick example. And if we have time, I might invite one of you up here to kind of come up here, give me your pitch, and let me give you some feedback on how you might improve that or change that. At the end of the day, how many times have you been in a meeting and all at once the entire room just sort of looks like they're glazed over? You know, they've completely lost interest. They're looking at their phone, they're trying to figure out what's going on Twitter or something else, but you're really not engaging with them. And in that particular audience, you're not communicating with them about stuff that means something to them. In this particular room, I'm assuming that each one of you wants to know more about how do I grow my business, how do I get more sales, how do I actually raise more money. And those are the things, if I start talking about how you get those things done, then I'm going to move you from being bored to being engaged. But in order for me to do that, I have to really do a good grasp as to who is the audience and what is important to you. So the first thing we have to do is understand what we mean when we say we're going to communicate value. So I have to figure out what is important to you, what are the terms of that, what are the units of that value, and then how do I express that. And I always say there are 4 different forms of value. There's time, there's money, there's joy, and there's pain. So if I'm not communicating to you on how I either make you money or save you money, save time, add joy, or remove pain, then I'm not communicating to you on those things that are important to you. And you have to figure out who you are. Are you an investor? Are you a customer? Are you a team member? Because each one of you are going to want to hear about different things. But it all boils down to time, money, joy, or pain. What I've been doing over the last 7 years has been largely around building visual representations of industries. And so I put this into my own system called a business ecosystem plan, where I'll take an individual industry and then map out all the individual stakeholders within an industry and look at how they interact. How does value flow between each of these stakeholders? So I've got stakeholders, I've got the values, I've got the value flows. And this creates an ecosystem upon which I can then put anybody else's business, product, or service into the ecosystem and look at how the ecosystem reacts. Does the ecosystem grow? Does it contract? Which one of the stakeholders is positively impacted? Which ones are negatively impacted? So those become my competitors or my detractors. Which ones are actually gaining benefit? They're potential customers. So stakeholders can be individuals, organizations, groups of individuals, or you can actually have people that are stakeholders that are outside the ecosystem, so they don't have any direct impact into the individual ecosystem. Most of my business that I deal with is business to business, so I don't do much business to consumer. So most of mine are organizations or groups of organizations or groups of individuals. So the value is then defined as what am I actually giving you, and then what are the units, and how do I measure those individual units? So who can tell me what is the value to and to whom for Facebook? Who's the customer for Facebook?
Advertising.
So the customer for Facebook is actually the advertisers. And what's the unit?
Attention.
The unit is attention.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Facebook is monetizing attention. All the media, the Daily Mail will tell you that Facebook is monetizing data. They're using data to enhance their attention. But what they're really doing is taking your attention away from the feed of your friend and moving it to an advertisement. And that's moving that attention. And it's a unit of attention that is being sold. And when that attention engages, it goes through to a click. That's the same thing with Google. So they're selling attention. But you need to look at what's really, really going on. So what is the value to the consumer?
More connectedness in their minds. They think it's quicker, faster, better to be in contact with people on Facebook than not
Yes,
be on
so
Facebook.
they're improving their social, so they're adding joy. So if you add joy, so that's what the consumer is getting. And what the consumer is paying with is they're paying with their attention. And the advertiser is paying with cash, and they're getting attention. So suddenly I've got a value exchange that is going on. And so when I look at somebody who wants to add to that particular ecosystem, I have to figure out, okay, if you're going to sit in the middle of that as a data provider, if you're going to sit in that as some kind of a plug-in for Facebook, where does that fit and how does that work and how does that look? So the other thing that I find a lot of times with startups is they have one presentation. One. And they use that presentation repeatedly for everything.
One size fits all.
One size fits all.
You
know, and it just doesn't work. At the Innovation Warehouse, we do a presentation day every Wednesday. And it's 5 minutes for the presentation, 5 minutes for Q&A, and 5 minutes for one-way feedback. And more often than not, I get a product presentation. And I'm like, no, these are investors. You need to have 2 slides max about your product, and the rest needs to be about your business. And then you take a customer presentation and you say, oh, and here's our growth path, and here's our growth forecast, and here's how many employees we're going to get. And they're like, that's not addressing my particular problem. And then with team members, you need to have a blend of those two, but also you need to add in what is your culture. Why is it a great place for me to work here? What is the future growth path for me on a career point? What are my real opportunities that I can have financially if I'm taking a cut in salary now? Each one of these is a different audience, each one of them has a different set of values, and each one is a different kind of a presentation. And then what's the engaging question that you can ask? I always like to kind of wait to the end of a presentation and say, okay, and then what's the one question that I can ask that will tell me more about you? So one of my favorite questions that I can ask a customer is, so tell me, how is my product or service going to make your bonus go up next quarter? And if the answer is it's not, they're probably not your customer. They're probably not the one that's going to make the decision. So you may actually use that as a way to qualify, am I speaking to the right person? You can come up with different engaging questions, but if you focus on what you really want to learn and you know who your audience is, you can pull a lot of information out of it. To communicate best, start by listening. So let's talk about a business ecosystem plan at the very simplest level. Everybody knows what property is, right? I've got somebody who's buying a house, I've got somebody who's selling a house, I've got a house and I've got some money, right? It's a really simple ecosystem. But actually, it's not. Actually, there's all these other people that are involved. I've got conveyancing solicitors, and I've got photographers, and I've got property portals, and estate agents, and banks, and now we're starting to look at all the different players that are part of the ecosystem just for doing real estate. And we look at the flows between those. Who's adding value, who's extracting value, who's paying for services, who's paying for goods, where does it all work, and why and how does it all work? And I had this customer called Matterport. Anybody heard of Matterport? Matterport did 360-degree photography, and they did it with a really expensive camera that also took a 3D vision and actually made it into a 3D geometric model you could actually import. And this was an amazing technology, and consumers absolutely loved it because they could actually kind of do a fly-through and a walk-through of a house without ever actually having to go to the house. And so, where is the value in all of that? Well, the value, consumers get a better perspective, they save time, they're differential from all the rest, and it's a fun experience. That's a lot of value that's being added to the consumers. What's the value proposition to the estate agent? Well, allegedly they would get more viewings, hopefully they would get more listings, it would reduce their cost, and it would reduce their time. That was the proposition that Matterport was telling to the estate agents. But it didn't work. Why did it not work? Does anybody have any ideas before I tell you why it didn't work?
Well, you wouldn't go and do the viewings. You just look online and never engage with it.
Correct.
No engagement.
And the estate agents want people to come in the door. So actually giving consumers too much information was delivering negative value to the estate agents. And it was the estate agents that we were asking to pay for this truly amazing service. So we were delivering positive value to the consumer, but negative value to the estate agent who was potentially our customer. Well, that's not going to work. And they tried this. IFIX tried it 10 years ago. And so the estate agent said, oh, we tried this 10 years ago, it was a mess. And you know, if I take pictures of this room, I can take all the dirty laundry and I can put it behind me. Then I can move the dirty laundry and I can turn around and I can take a picture of the room. With a 360 camera sitting here, I've got to clean the entire room because there's nowhere the dirty laundry to hide before I take the pictures.
I just wanted to say I work in sport, and so many sports clubs are still doing this. It drives me nuts when they say their latest way to engage their customers is to do 360 viewings of an empty suite.
Yeah, of an empty suite.
Which makes actually nobody go and view it, and it makes you just think it's the dullest place on earth, and the sales have dropped.
Yeah, people are still trying to figure out why 360 photography makes sense or doesn't make sense.
It's hard to gain perspective as well, though. The camera's often wide angle and it just looks...
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You can't gauge the size unless you're in it.
The 360 cameras themselves have improved tremendously. We were at Sushi Sama for dinner the other night, and Sushi Sama is a big, beautiful venue, and it happened to be really good for that particular purpose. Because you had interesting food, you had interesting people, and you had interesting things to look at 360 degrees. But it was a very rare environment where that actually worked.
And people don't go to those events so that they can get a really clear view of the carpet.
No.
They go because they want to rub shoulders with people and, you know, other celebrities or whatever, and they don't want to see an empty space.
But
You're not buying the feeling or the...
So using the BEP, what we try to do is we help you identify and validate what is the hypothesis that you're putting forward, where are you adding value, where are you extracting value, and sometimes looking at the overall industry, you can find out how you're impacting adjacent industries. So in the real estate, an adjacent industry would be the man-in-van industry. You know, how are you affecting those particular provision of telephone, gas, electric, their entire services? But it gets you a holistic view of your market as an ecosystem and how the ecosystem responds. When I'm doing B2B and I know who my actual customer is, I then take the customer and do a BEP for the customer. And now I look at, okay, who within the customer has the budget, who has the authority, who has the pain point, who's going to be made redundant, who's going to have to work prices hard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I can figure out within an organization, who am I supposed to be communicating to? And from that, I can then build a go-to-market strategy because I know the message, which was the value proposition, and I know who I'm speaking to. The last bit of the BEP is, I said there are units. So those units of value allow me to do business models. So I can do pricing strategies. And I can say, I know I'm affecting your business in this way. I'm reducing your cost by 10%. I'll take 10% of that as mine. So suddenly you get messaging that you can actually justify your pricing. Not just how do the competitors price themselves, but based on the value you are bringing, the value you are creating in save time, make money, save money, add joy, remove pain. Once you can quantify those units, you can build a pricing strategy around them as well. I want to tell one other story. So this is FinTech. So I've been working since May of last year. I've been up to my eyeballs in blockchain, Bitcoin, crypto, and the rest. Anybody else crypto, blockchain-ish? Yeah, okay. I think Bitcoin is kind of a bubble within a bubble within a bubble within a bubble, so we're going to throw the bubble away, and we'll just talk about kind of blockchain. They had an interesting thing about tickets being put on the blockchain the other day. And they were trying to eliminate ticket touting, because if you put everything on the blockchain, then the ticket was sold to a specific consumer and it was written into the ledger. And if you sold it to him, then you could actually put that in the ledger, but it would be shown exactly how much you sold it for. It would be totally transparent, and it would eliminate all of this gouging and all this ticket touting. And I was like, that's interesting, but there's one problem. Nobody sees it as a problem. All of the venues, all they want is they want to sell their tickets. They don't care if they sell them to ticket touts. They don't care if they sell them to hotels and ticket brokers. They don't care if they sell them to individual consumers. They want to sell their tickets. So again, we're applying for a problem that is great value to a consumer, but the consumer isn't the one who's paying for it. It's the actual venue that has to pay for this ticketing solution, and for them, they don't perceive they have a problem. So they've got an uphill climb to go. Now, yes, there are some artists right now that are indeed saying, ethically, I want to give the best value to my consumers, and ethically, I hate that. But you know what? There's this venue in the middle. So as long as there's the venue in the middle that wants the cash, the performer can be as ethical as they want, the consumer can want the best prices as they want, but again, the ecosystem says the value has to flow through that channel, and you've got to have the right value to make it all work. I need to change the animation on these slides. Why talk about value? How do you describe value? Where is the value? And who is the value for? So know your audience, understand the 4 forms of value, understand how to communicate what that value is. And I'm Troy. You can find me at the Innovation Warehouse. Drop me an email, find me on Twitter, say hello. Thank you very much.